Ahead. This is Fox News.
Want to win $100? Join the Guam Visitors Bureau's Protect Guam campaign series to show how you're helping our island in the fight against COVID-19. There are 2 ways to win. Upload your photos or videos to visitguam.com or share on social media how you're wearing your mask, showcasing Guam heroes, or staying active and healthy with the Protect Guam hashtag. Don't forget to download the Guam COVID Alert app. Let's protect and support each other through these tough times. For a chance to win $100, check out visitguam.com.
You've heard of double mile credit card rewards? You can forget all about that. At First Hawaiian Bank, we're stepping it up. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4 times. You guessed it. First Hawaiian Bank is giving you 5 times the miles. Use your First Hawaiian Bank credit card and get rewarded 5 miles for every dollar spent with qualifying purchases at grocery stores. Plus 20,000 bonus miles. Learn more at any First Hawaiian Bank branch or go to FHB.com to apply today. First Hawaiian Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And along those lines, I got a couple articles here I want to share with you today, starting out with something I picked up from a column called Bearing Arms, asking the question, could Texas become a Second Amendment sanctuary state? Well, I'll tell you this, if anybody can do it, them boys down there in Texas are the ones to do it. At least 63 counties in Texas have passed Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions in the past year. But the movement could get even bigger boost in the coming weeks as lawmakers return to Austin from their legislative session. Steve Toth, a Republican from the Woodlands, has authored a bill that would make the entire state a sanctuary for the right to keep and bear arms. HB 112, also known as the Texas Firearms Protection Act, would prohibit the state or any local governments from enforcing any federal statute, order, rule, or regulation enacted on or after January 1, 2021 that purports to regulate a firearm, firearm accessory, or firearm ammunition if the statute, order, rule, or regulation imposes a prohibition, restriction, or other regulation such as a capacity or size limitation, a registration requirement, which, by the way, we have here, or background check that does not exist under the laws of Texas. Under the bill, any entity that chose to enforce any federal gun control law would be subject to loss of state grant money, and the individual officials who would enforce those new laws could face a Class A misdemeanor charge. Okay, and then they track that with what the left wants to provide a sanctuary for, which is illegal aliens. Texas guns, California illegal aliens. Where would you rather live? In June of last year, the Supreme Court upheld a California law by refusing to hear a challenge to it. Since the language on enforcing or helping to enforce federal immigration law has withstood legal challenges, it seems to me the safest bet would be to base any state-level Second Amendment sanctuary bills on the language in California's law, hewing as closely as possible to the original text while changing the topic from protecting illegal immigrants to protecting gun owners. So that's pretty good news. And I mentioned there that in Texas, if the feds try to enact a gun registration law, then at least in 63 counties, the Texans won't comply with it. And the folks, the gun rights folks, will tell you that gun registration laws are a really nice deal for the anti-gunners, because if you own a gun and then you have to go down and you have to register that gun, serial number, etc., your name, address, identifying information, etc. If the state, if the state ever passed a law that said we're going to go out and we're going to go out and pick up all the guns, it wouldn't be hard for them to find them, would it? All those people who are hollering and screaming about privacy, are you listening over there, CCU? Don't see this as an infringement on privacy at all. I got some more good news on the Second Amendment here, and that comes from a senator who has introduced what he called a stand your ground law.
Who could that be?
Yeah, who else could it be, right? Yeah.
You got me there.
Yeah, this Bill 1236, allow a person to defend themselves using defensive force. Yeah, well, if you haven't figured it out yet, it's Senator Joe San Augustine. And his Bill 1236 would allow a person, now this is in the Post. I don't know about the Post. I really like them, but they've got to pull themselves together. Here's how the sentence reads. 12-36 would allow a person to defend themselves using defensive force. A person to defend themselves. And I'd use this all the time. So 1236 only applies to Siamese twins then, right? Oh, well, my bad. I can't even say that. Conjoined twins. Couldn't you, Guam Daily Post, couldn't you have said Bill 12-36 allows people to defend themselves? But if you did, then you wouldn't be able to you wouldn't be able to tell people what your pronouns are. My pronouns are they, them, and themselves, opposed to saying, come on, Post. We depend on you for something better than that. So I've got the operative portion of Bill 12 here. And let's see. They're not woke. It says the person who uses defensive force. Wait a minute. Let me turn to the other side here. The operative portion of the bill. The defendant is not obligated to retreat from his dwelling place of work or vehicle, or any other location where he has a right to be, unless he or she was the initial aggressor. Now, they could have just used they, and then Joe would have been able to say, I know what I'm doing, I'm woke. But I guess he's leaving that to Jim Moylan. So the big change to current law is that it adds in this language after place of dwelling, place of work, or vehicle. It adds the following: or any other location where he or she has a right to be. Okay, so we started out with the doctrine of self-defense, and the doctrine of self-defense said you could use force to defend yourself, but you had a duty to retreat before you used force. So if you're just walking down the street and somebody comes up to you with a club and said, I'm going to beat you up, you had a duty to say, please don't beat me. Well, you don't have to say anything. You have a duty to back up or run away, even if you got your own club. That's the law of self-defense. You have a duty to retreat. Now, the one exception to the duty to retreat under the common law was you did not have a duty to retreat inside your own home. So if somebody appears at your front door with a club, forces his way in, you could pick up your own club and bang him a good one. But outside of that, there was the duty to retreat. Well, our stand your ground changed that made it clear that our Castle Doctrine changed that, made it clear you did not have to retreat in your dwelling, at your workplace, or in your car. Okay? So if you're in your car and somebody comes along and tries to force his way into your car, and you happen to be packing heat, and he's pulling that door, you can whip out your gun and show it to him. And I suppose if he persists, you could squeeze one off at him. Whereas before, you would have had to retreat before you used force. The stand your ground expands that one more, so that if you're walking down the street and the guy comes after you with a club, you got a club, you can club him back. I suppose if you have a gun, you can take a shot at him. Now, this really gets dicey because there is the concept of proportionality, and that is that if I were walking down the street out in front of the studio here, and somebody came up to me and said something snotty, and he said, "I'm going to slap your face," and he reaches up and slaps my face, I can't reach in my pocket, pull out my 1911 45 and drill him on the spot. You can't. It doesn't go that far. So there's this concept of proportionality, and I expect that every time someone relies on the stand your ground case, there will be extensive judicial proceedings to determine whether or not it was properly used. The one tip that I can pass along to everyone, if you have to use stand your ground, Castle Doctrine, that is the doctrine of self-defense, you're much safer if you use it because you're afraid than because you're angry. Using it because you're angry, not a good idea. Anyhow, Joe San Augustine strikes again. This is his third time, and I put this on the calendar as no, I didn't put it on the calendar, did I? But I started out to put it on the calendar as Joe San Augustine versus anti-gunners, because I suspect there will be anti-gunners within the 36th Guam legislature who will be opposed to this and would really like to amend it on the floor to confiscate every single gun on the island. Okay, so that's the Second Amendment. Let's go to Zemi Ikotny. And once again, we've got some boilerplate here. The Trump-bashing boilerplate is about all you'll ever find on that page. The topic is Police the Policing. Why wasn't U.S. Capitol prepared for violence? The great security failures of American history have been mercifully rare. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 was certainly one, as were the hijacked jetliners flown into buildings in New York and D.C. on 2001. The sacking of the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday. It wasn't good. It was a bad thing. Was the Capitol sacked, as we understand that word?
Well, they weren't fired.
Though far less deadly than those strikes from foreign countries, can now be added to this list. At the very center of government for the world's most powerful country, thousands of pro-Trump rioters in sweats and MAGA hats simply walked up the hill. Simply. Broke into the building and desecrated a place of national pride. A Capitol police officer was among the 5 who died. How could this possibly have happened? Police and federal authorities surely had plenty of warning. Now, here's the good part. President Trump had been lying for weeks about being cheated out of re-election. Thousands of his most rabid followers were in high dudgeon, and Wednesday would be the moment Congress would affirm Joe Biden's election to the president. Trump exhorted people to come to this day to demonstrate, will be wild, quote unquote. Now, is this the kind of stuff that Robert Underwood's talking about?
It was a dark and stormy night.
Yeah. So if you're on the
Such a
left,
heavy layered hyperbole.
if you're on the left, that's not only permissible, it's almost required. Yeah. Okay, then from there we go to the Post. And two good editorials here in a row. I got to grab my blue pencil. Yeah, I know I'm going to need my blue pencil for this one. Here we go. Public officials should advocate against corruption. A recorded phone call between Jesse Mendiola Blas and a federal informant gave some behind-the-scenes details on how the case against the former Jonia mayor unfolded. The recorded calls played in the sentencing hearing for the former mayor last week offered damning details in the bribery case against Blas. The defendant extorted money in exchange for the use of mailboxes, which were under the Jonia mayor's control, for illegal drug distribution. In a recorded call on March 21, 2019, Blas was heard saying he would shut down one mailbox if he didn't get paid drug money promised to him. I suggest you tell them, don't send anything until I get something. Give me at least $8,000 so I can keep these people away from me and pay my medical. The mayor was recorded as saying to a woman who turned out to be a federal informant. A video recording from January 12, 2019, played in federal court last week, also detailed how the mayor named a price for the use of another mailbox for bringing in more drug packages to include cocaine. How much do you want? The informant asked Blas. A mailbox goes for about $15,000, Blas said. Can you do that? Right after $15,000, no more. You don't have to pay me no more, the mayor was recorded as having said. Blas faces a maximum of 20 years in federal prison after he pleaded guilty to a single count of extortion under color of official right. As the sentencing hearing was about to start, two public officials went out of their way to write letters in support of the mayor's request for a more lenient sentence. Now, the title of this article is Public Officials Should Advocate Against Corruption, not for corruption. Agate Mayor Kevin Suswiku wrote to the court describing Blas as, quote, admirable. His willing to put the people he serves before himself was and always will be admirable, Suswiku wrote. Suswiku said Blas has become a great colleague and friend. Here we go. No one person is perfect. Okay, that's it. Nobody's perfect. Not even the governor, right?
He forgot to tie his laces, tripped, and corrupt.
Yeah, didn't the governor tell us that no one is perfect?
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah. No one is perfect, and we should all learn to forgive and learn from one another. Mr. Blas may have hit a bump in his journey, but I believe that if given an opportunity to make or correct his wrongdoings, he will be more than able to surpass and rebuild a better way of life. I sure hope so. Man, I'm just rooting for this guy. Give him a break, you know. Mayor's Council former executive director Angel Sablon wrote, while we can say that he brought this upon himself, I will stand by him as my friend. I am asking for lenience for his sentence, not because I want to diminish the gravity of his crime. I asked for leniency because Jesse owned up to his mistake and accepted that he did make a mistake when he entered his plea bargain and several charges against him were dropped. He is a very humble, caring, that's the key, humility. A very humble, loving, caring, generous, hilarious. Boy, he should be a talk show host. Genuine, passionate, high-spirited, and well-regarded among his community and his peers. Now, I dwell on what Angel Sablon said, and it must be dwelled upon. I go back here to a little bit longer quote if I can find it. Yeah. Sablon, in his letter, wrote that Blas owned up to his mistake. It takes a remorseful person to admit a wrongdoing. Does it really? I believe his time in detention has given him the opportunity to accept his mistake and accept whatever punishment he gets, Sablon wrote. I only ask that his many years of service to our people not be nullified by an act he undoubtedly regrets today. Sablon also wrote, the price for ending what was a future hope and dedication to his community and the end of a career that was entrusted to him by the very people he let down is already heavy punishment. I can't find the part where... Oh, yeah, here's the part I really wanted to read. This is a letter that Sablon wrote, Angel Sablon wrote to Judge Gatewood. I write this letter in no other capacity than a personal friend. This is the executive director of the Mayor's Council. I have known Jesse for many years. He has always shown me the utmost respect in all our interactions, and we have treated each other as brothers would. Let him go, let him go. Moreover, he has never shown me that he is a man that I could not trust. Did you ever buy any drugs from him, Angel? Needless to say, his indictment was a total shock. That's the executive director of the Mayor's Council. And once again, the title of this editorial today, Public Officials Should Advocate Against Corruption. Going back to the editorial, knowing the details of this case, it was surprising that the executive director and the agate mayor advocated for Blas to reduce a sentence and continued to support the former mayor publicly. There are still major unanswered questions in this case. One of them is the name and fate of the Guam Police Department officer who allegedly threatened the federal government informant Brenda Kinnian. We hope the sentencing of the former mayor will not end in the crackdown on the drug-related corruption on the island. It would be wiser for the Mayor's Council director and the agate mayor to take a strong public stand against corruption rather than lavish praise on Blas. That's not the message we want our community hear from those in positions of power and the government payroll. Absolutely. I'm glad I went and got my blue pen because I really need it here. There's no question about it, but this is definitely a blue star editorial. Guam Daily Post, there it is. So the title, Public Officials Should Advocate Against Corruption. Now, as long as we condone performances like this, like the executive director of the Mayor's Council coming out and singing the praises of a guy like Jesse Bloss, a drug-dealing criminal. We're never going to be able to put corruption behind us. It'll never happen if we have this mindset. So if we have people like Bloss, Angel Sablon, and Susuiko, the message has to come home to those guys. No, that's not what we're looking for. We don't want this kind of behavior. And when we find this kind of behavior in our community, how many lives have been ruined by methamphetamine? And this guy Bloss is right in there profiting off of it. If we have public officials who do this, then we're just encouraging that which ought to be forbidden. So I go along with the post 100%. Public officials should advocate against corruption, not in favor of it, which is exactly what Angel Sablon did. In a world in which we wanted to end corruption, the Mayor's Council would come out and dissociate itself from Sablon. But what do we hear from the Mayor's Council? You got that sound effect, don't you? Yeah, that's it. All right, let's take a short break and we'll head for the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Buying a house, apartment, or condo, selling your home or property, or maybe you're renting a house, apartment, or condo on Guam. Whatever your real estate needs are, you can count on the professionals at Horizon Properties to take care of you. Call Horizon Properties at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonproperties.com or follow them on Facebook at Horizon Properties Guam. Maria Miller and the professionals at Horizon Properties. All you need to know in real estate.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are with the card, today's card. And as I mentioned, you can see today's card and today's program notes on Jungle Watch. And you could also watch Jungle Watch shortly after the program just by going to junglewatch.info. And after you've watched, you can post a comment on Jungle Watch. You could do it anonymously if you'd like. Here's a comment I picked up off Jungle Watch today, directed at Tall Tales. And it's a good one. Here's what the commenter says. Hi, Bob. Maybe you've already discussed this, but have you seen DPHSS's standing order on the distribution of the vaccine? It references, quote, pregnant people and, quote, lactating people. How woke is it? How woke is being forbidden to say biological females supposed to raise the dignity of biological females? So the Public Health and Secret Services is telling people, issuing warning about the vaccine to pregnant people and lactating people. That goes back to CNN and their cervical cancer vaccine, where they were recommending that the cervical cancer vaccine was something that everyone with a cervix ought to consider. You couldn't say women. You can't say lactating females or pregnant women. You have to say pregnant people. Because, well, you know, just because someone's pregnant, does that mean that they are a female? Not anymore. Anyhow, I hope you go to Jungle Watch. Post your pithy comments there. Okay, let's talk about the program notes for today. The GOP is calling out professional politicians on the part-time legislature, and Frank Blas has answered. And then yesterday, Robert took on talk show hosts, and today, so does Cumulus Media. So I've put that down. Robert versus talk show host goes national. And let's see, we take a look at the $268,000 man, Dr. Cabrera. Gura commissioners aren't able to save face for Ray Topaznia. I think in order to save face for Ray Topaznia, plastic surgery maybe? Put a little bit of a cant in his face.
A ruler, keep it straight.
Well, it's too straight now, yeah. Jim W. has introduced Bill 1736, contrary to what the Attorney General has advised about deputy directors. I'll get into that. And Tall Tales versus Van, I take on an old liberal friend. And racism raises its ugly head when Vogue magazine, I know you don't read that magazine. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Vogue magazine is a women's fashion magazine. Yeah. How sexist can I be, right? Yeah. Racism raises its ugly head when Vogue's cover photo of Kamala doesn't pass muster with the left. And they make a deal. They make a deal out of it. And then shouldn't the heirs of Frank Paris be singing the Give the Land Back to the Original Owner song? Frank Paris gave the land that the hospital and the cultural lease, the purported cultural lease are located on. He gave that to the government to be used as a hospital, not to be used as some kind of a cultural lease boondoggle. And we got Guam versus USA heads for the Supreme Court. And then Dominion voting machines gives Sidney Powell a chance to prove her claims, like a $1 billion chance. And then I've got Simon Black compliments Dennis Prager by explaining the new theocracy and some things that have been on the card for quite a while that I may never get to. But let's start out with Robert Underwood Goes National. So yesterday I read Robert Underwood's column from the Daily News, and Robert lectured us on the truth. Truth is a tough taskmaster. I repeated this over and over as president of the university. I had to tell an academic institution that no clever argument, no emotional outrage, no personal interest should stand in the way of our obligation to search for the truth. And then he goes on and states a little bit of historical background. And then he gets into his bending the truth a little bit himself by saying, in electing the President of the United States, there is still the barrier of territorial participation. There's no barrier there. On Guam, we are painfully aware that we are not full Americans. As often as you try to convince us of that, Robert, I go back to your first sentence. Truth is a tough taskmaster. We are full Americans. He then goes on to say that the barrier has not yet been destroyed and may never be. That is the truth. And then, when after talking about the truth, he goes on to a part of the column labeled Seditious Acts. Today, arriving at the truth is made more difficult by the seditious acts of President Donald Trump, who will not accept the reality that he lost. He has not only failed to be responsible, has decided to enrage his supporters. Like the leader of a crime mob and a mob in the streets. Now, later on, he gigs talk show personalities by saying, do you think it's cute to compare political leaders to ruthless dictators? Worse, do you really believe that it's a legitimate comparison? This is a no-no, according to Robert. Yeah, and then once again he says, like the leader of a crime mob and a mob in the street, he has decided to misuse facts and lies in pursuit of personal interest. So I don't know if this part of his column is meant as an example of that which he said we shouldn't do.
Maybe it was a collaborative piece.
Yeah. It does say we do have some individual soul searching to do. Do we post irresponsible statements on Facebook aimed at destroying fellow human beings? Do we post irresponsible statements in our newspaper column aimed at destroying? Do we create alternate, on and on. Then he goes on to criticize media managers on Guam have a special responsibility. You are not just handmaidens for every outrageous assertion or charge. You are the guardians and not just the practitioners of free speech. Now, I don't see the C word in here, but I kind of see Robert advocating that media managers behave as though they were Facebook or Twitter. That's kind of the implication. Media managers, including talk show personalities and responsible journalists, must take a stand to discourage reckless statements. Let me see if I can find a reckless statement here. Today, arriving at the truth is made more difficult by the seditious acts of President Trump, who will not accept the reality that he lost. He has not only failed to be responsible, he has decided to enrage his supporters like the leader of a crime. Anyhow. And then he goes on to say, talk show personalities who facilitate discussion of public policy must also be responsible for their statements and how they behave. They cannot hide behind humor or deflect responsibility to those they put on their programs. Have courage to disavow what you know is an outrageous... Well, I just did. I just disavowed an outrageous statement. Yours, Robert. If we are not involved in the search for truth, we will be overwhelmed by lies. So much for Robert. Now, I ran across this article last night. This came from of all places, the WAPost, the WAPO, the Washington Compost. After months of stoking anger about alleged election fraud, one of America's largest talk radio companies has decided on an abrupt change of direction. Cumulus Media, which employs some of the most popular right-leaning radio talk hosts in the United States, not me, I fit into that category, but it's not me, has told its on-air personalities to stop suggesting that the election was stolen from President Trump or else face termination. A Cumulus Media executive issued the directive on Wednesday, just as Congress met to certify Joe Biden's election victory, and an angry mob of Trump supporters marched on the Capitol, overwhelmed police, and briefly occupied the building, terrorizing lawmakers and leading to the deaths of 5 people. We need to help induce national calm now. Brian Phillips, Executive Vice President of Content for Cumulus, wrote an internal memo which was first reported by a company called Inside Music Media. Cumulus and its program syndication arm, Westwood One, which I've heard of, will not tolerate any suggestion that the election has not ended. The election has been resolved and there are no alternate acceptable paths. The memo adds, if you transgress this policy, you can expect to separate from the company immediately. So if you carry on any of this talk about election irregularities and how some of the officials work to take the election away from Trump, you're going to have to be doing it with a bullhorn because you're going to lose your microphone. Very interesting. So, Robert, I guess Cumulus Media must read your column because they seem to be taking you up. The talk show hosts must stick to the party line, or if they don't, they ought to be fired. Okay, let me see who I got in. Okay. I've got another Joe and R. James who want to chime in already. Okay, another Joe, tell me what I need to know.
Okay, so you're saying that Democrats were suggesting that there's intimidation and mafia mentality. The only intimidation I'm observing is anyone who doesn't think on the same way as Democrats.
Well, Robert is saying you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't compare public officials to these bad people, right? Let me see if I can find that. He says, do you think it's cute to compare political leaders to ruthless dictators? That's what he said. And then he himself says, like the leader of a crime mob, he has decided to misuse facts. So he does the same thing that he criticizes.
And the kids nowadays can't possibly understand the real fear of the Italian mafia before the RICO Act. So, I mean, his audience, presumably are the millennials, they don't comprehend it. They don't really understand the reach of the mafia, like I said before, Giuliani and the RICO Act. So we have an idea of what fear is, and the only place I'm seeing it mostly from, or the place I'm seeing it mostly from, Uncle Bob, is from the Democrats and the liberal media.
I'll tell you what I fear, and this is not something in the abstract or something that's happening in Nebraska. What I fear is this attempt to throttle speech and public opinion, like Robert's doing in his column. What Robert is doing is saying you shouldn't be criticizing people unless it's on the left. I mean, if it's on the right. If it's Donald Trump, it's fair game. But other than that, you talk show hosts, you've got a responsibility. And I wonder if what he's really saying is talk show hosts should not criticize candidates for the United States Congress if they happen to be named Robert Underwood. I wonder if that's what he's actually saying.
Well, come on, and also I think they're giving talking points, what people should and should not be talking about.
Yeah.
But the main reason I called out was you were talking about the drugs issue of drugs, meth, and we're there's these reports of people finding them in 55-gallon drums, even in some of the COFA countries. I think there's earlier this month, I think, or December, there's news of I think a 55-gallon drum full of drugs worth in the millions. So I'm just curious if it's possible that some of these people involved, including public officials, if somehow there's a connection going way back to decades to when CNMI was still a trust territory, when there was a CIA base in the CNMI. Have you heard anything in the news that would suggest that there is operations similar to that happening stateside?
I kind of doubt it because Angel Sablon has not come out and publicly praised anyone from the CNMI who would have been involved in the drug trade. Got to take a short break here, another Joe, and I'm going to come back after the break to R. James.
It takes all of us to protect Guam. Join the Guam Visitors Bureau in our social media campaign series aimed to protect our island and each other in this COVID-19 era. Participate in the Protect Guam movement by wearing your mask, showcasing Guam's heroes, staying active, and downloading the Guam COVID Alert app. Post and share your content with us. Use the hashtag #ProtectGuam, and you could win $100. It's that simple. Check out visitguam.com for details. Let's reclaim our lives, our economy, and our tourism industry.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagatna location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Okay, so here we are again, back on Tall Tales. I'm going on to the next item on the card, which is Dr. Cabrera versus Dr. Dombrowski. Yeah, Dr. Dombrowski was a temporary medical director at the Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services. He was replaced by Dr. Cabrera. And there's an interesting story here about Dr. Cabrera. Felix Cabrera, a member of the governor's Physicians Advisory Group, has started working with the Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services. According to personnel documents, Cabrera will be earning $268,239 annual salary. Oh, I forgot about R. James. Yeah, Dr. Cabrera, hang on for just a second. I got to talk to R. James.
He was afraid he was getting censored.
Yeah. Hey, my bad, R. James.
Yeah, Bob, you better be careful if you make references and an opinion about the Department of whatever insert name here and Secret Services. Somebody may recommend that Ray have to let you go and you be terminated.
Exactly.
Better be careful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just a couple of just short, sweet comments, and then maybe a slightly longer one. But with regards to Robert's editorial, I hate to say it, but you know, here again, you have to call it the way you see it. He seems to be drifting farther and farther from center, and on his editorial today and the way he's worded it, I have to agree with you, Bob. I disagree with Robert, and I have to stand apart from him on that type of a view and those types of recommendations, and or anyone else that follows those types of views and recommendations. That's what the First Amendment and free speech and our country have always been about. Okay. Number two, you know, I've gone back for the last couple of days and I've looked at everything that I can find anyway, and I'm failing to find where it is that President Trump said that I appreciate your support. Everyone needs to show up armed. You need to bring your torches and your pitchforks and your AR-15s, and you need to storm the Capitol and enter the premises, and you need to break the law. I'm failing to find any reference that he made. I find a lot of references to, you know, hey, if you'd like to show your support, please show up for the rally. We would love to see you there, and then let's walk over to the Capitol steps and let's show our Congress how we feel. I see lots of references to that, but I'm failing to find anything where he calls for outright insurrection or technically even anything illegal. I mean, that is unless they're going to change the definition of come to a rally and show your support, which people have been doing since Dr. Martin Luther King back in the 50s. So if they're now going to say that Dr. Martin Luther King calling for people to show up at rallies and the Million Man March and the whole thing is now a crime that makes you a quote-unquote enemy of the state, and if you just happen to be the president, you can be impeached for it, then we really do have some problems, okay? Showing up at a rally and showing your support, there's absolutely nothing wrong or illegal with that. And President Trump, I can't find any place where he actually quote unquote said for anyone to do anything illegal or incited a riot. So once again, I think they're making up everything that they can grab. They're getting every straw they can get their hands on, and they're making every excuse that they can in the book. I don't know. That's just the way I'm seeing it. But like I said, if it's to the point now where you can be silenced for just having an opinion that doesn't have anything to do with starting a civil war or showing up armed or actually breaking a law, if you can be silenced just for having an opinion to show up and show support for something that you feel is true, correct, whatever, then I think we're sunk, really do, because that's the only thing that has put the mortar between the bricks that hold our country together. Okay, and there's a reason why it worked for a little over 200 years, but now there's also a reason why it's starting to come apart at those mortar joints that we're seeing that hold the bricks of our country together. They want to control what you see, what you hear, what you say, what you feel, what you think. They want to control what you buy, how you buy it, where you buy it from. Then they're going to ask you questions about what it's being used for. Okay? Everybody needs to wake up. This is a power play with a capital P from the word go here. All right? That's all it is, nothing more. And they're doing a really good job because the silent majority has been silent and has not been voicing those opinions that should have been voiced for about the last 20 years, really. I mean, this didn't happen overnight, folks. This has happened over in a period of time, and they have literally chipped away and chipped away and chipped away, and now they think that they can actually do it and get away with it. And they've got a pretty good head start on it. I'm actually kind of worried. I don't know how you feel, Bob, but that's the way I see it.
Well, every day I'm thankful that there's such a thing as tall tales and that there is an outlet for the truth right here in the Western Pacific, and that I've got a posse of tailgaters out there that are with me on these very same things, because that's what it takes. You know, it's so much easier just to say, well, you know, I didn't like it, but I didn't want to say anything because some of my friends might not like it, and I don't want people to give me the Atan Baba, and Angel Sablon stuck up for him, so I guess he must be okay. You know, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, that's definitely, that might be the quote-unquote safe way to play it, but it's definitely not the correct and the right way to play it. If you've got an opinion, especially if there's anything that even comes close to supporting that opinion with fact, then there should be absolutely no reason for you not to voice your opinion. But most importantly, there shouldn't be any valid reason, concocted or otherwise, for anyone to keep you from sharing your opinion. As long as it's not outright hate speech, as long as it's not threatening breaking laws, some type of violence, okay? You know, that old saying, opinions are like, you know, and everybody's got one, okay? And a reasonably educated person knows the difference between someone who's speaking from a point of view that may be correct. It may still need to be proven out.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. Wednesday.
Clearly, this is something that the president doesn't like, but the White House isn't too worried about the political implications of another impeachment because even if they do it quickly, the Senate isn't scheduled to come back in session until the 19th, and it would be pretty difficult, if not impossible, for the Senate to hold an impeachment trial, potentially convict the president before he leaves office, and to have a trial in the Senate later after the Biden administration's been trying to get up to speed, and then only for the reason of preventing the president from running again for re-election in 2024 might present a difficult calculus politically, even legally. White House sources say that they are simply trying to keep the president focused on his accomplishments.
Fox's John Roberts at the White House reports the president will visit the southern border wall Tuesday to talk about his achievements. The president met in the Oval Office Monday with Vice President Pence, their first face-to-face conversation since last week's rift between them. President Trump has approved an emergency declaration for Washington, D.C., ordering federal assistance to help with the local response ahead of President-elect Biden's inauguration next Wednesday. 2 Capitol Hill police officers have been suspended over last week's riots.
Ohio Democrat Tim Ryan says one officer who was seen taking a selfie with protesters who entered the Capitol and another officer who wore a Make America Great Again hat have been suspended as part of an investigation. Ryan says he's urging new leadership at U.S. Capitol Police to be open and transparent about last week's breach of the Capitol.
We have to begin to reestablish trust with the United States Capitol Police because of what happened.
Ryan says there is no evidence of any insider assistance from police.
Fox's Jared Halpern. In college football's national championship game, the Tide rolled. Alabama's Crimson Tide beating the Ohio State Buckeyes 52-34 for their 6th national title in a dozen years.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
A social media platform is suing after one tech giant stopped hosting it and 2 others blocked downloads of its app.
Parler is fighting back, suing Amazon for banning the social media site. It's the latest development after Apple, Amazon, and Google yanked Parler from their app offerings this weekend. And so far, the decision is essentially killing the social media app. Google made the first move Friday, suspending Parler from its app store for failing to take down violent content posted by users they say orchestrated the siege on Capitol Hill. The tech giants are alleging the site is lawless, allowing users to promote and organize violence and hate speech. Republican lawmakers are calling foul, claiming big tech is now censoring conservatives. They also point out some of the world's worst dictators are alive and well on Facebook and Twitter.
Fox's Jillian Turner. A Southwest Airlines jet taken to a remote section of the Baltimore-Washington airport upon landing Monday night and evacuated after the flight crew reported finding a threatening note on board. Police investigated and reported there was no credible threat. New Zealand will soon require that travelers from most countries show negative coronavirus tests before they depart for the island nation. The country's COVID-19 response minister says New Zealand has virtually stamped out the community spread of the virus, but takes nothing for granted. There is renewed interest in a volunteer safety group in New York City.
An increase in crime, much of it in areas where crime is traditionally low, and that, says founder Curtis Liwa, is bringing a whole new breed of recruits.
These are professionals. These are people, hipster millennials who really didn't know much about the guardian angels, but they understood, oh, this deals with protecting my community.
And older angels who had hung up their trademark red berets coming out of retirement to rejoin patrols because streets are becoming unsafe again. In New York, Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
Good night, Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Rolling sound, quiet, and action.
The Ray Gibson Show. Starring Senator Mana Silva Tyron as the news anchor.
I'm Mana Silva Tyron, and I'll have your local news every morning. Life moves pretty fast, so stay with us to stay informed right here on The Point.
Also starring Jerry Roberts as the Better Business Training Guru.
Get out there and do something good today. Like listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m., where we go extra for you.
Produced by the real Joe Cruz. And your warm and intelligent host, Ray Gibson.
It's the Gibson Stream of Consciousness. All the players and all the games with cameos and calls from the most interesting people like you. We'll see and hear you right here on your talk radio superstation. This is The Point.
The Ray Gibson Show was filmed before a live Facebook audience.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
So we spent a little time talking about the media, what happened at the White House, as you were at the Capitol, the press, talk shows, etc. And I think it's necessary to talk a little bit about analysis. A good talk show host, I think, must analyze what is going on before him. And I consider myself not only a good talk show host, but a good analyst. And the only thing that keeps me from talking about how good I am at those two things is that my overwhelming sense of humility, of which I am inordinately proud. But analyzing what happened in the last election, there is enough out there, enough evidence out there to suggest that there were extreme irregularities in the last election. Much of it caused by mail-in ballots and the wriggling around of the rules with the mail-in ballots, which my analysis of the Electors Clause of the Constitution says shouldn't have happened. So I'm going to introduce the word colorable, which has nothing to do with people of color. A colorable claim is one that is not frivolous. It's one that you could advance as though you were Ray Topaznia. You could advance with a straight face. Others may have different opinions, different analysis that are even more forceful than your own. But the one that you advance is arguably correct. You can make a good faith argument that it's correct, even though later events turn out maybe it wasn't correct. So I would say that Trump has colorable claims that there were so many irregularities in the last election that had those irregularities not occurred, he might have been the victor. That being the case, then Trump and those working with him had every right to use the mechanism that the Constitution created for challenging elections, which is exactly what they started out to do. On the 6th of January, I've been through it so many times, I think everybody knows how it works now. One objection from the House, one objection from the Senate, et cetera, et cetera. And the Congress has the ability to determine which electoral votes it will count and which ones it won't count. So you can't fault the people who came forward and use the mechanism for challenge that has been in place since the 12th Amendment to challenge based on these colorable claims. Politicians don't usually speak in the logical, understated tones that I'm speaking in now. Hyperbole, rousing language, inspirational language, that's the rule of the day. One of the things that a politician has to be, if he's going to be successful, he's got to be interesting. He could be smart as a whip, but if he's boring, he's not going to get to first base. So we look at all the rhetoric that was spread around here, going actually back to before Trump was elected. Hillary Clinton, never concede. They stole the election from me. They could do that to you too. Anti-Max, when you see these Republicans, get in their face, make their life miserable. When you see, what's her name, Huckabee, in a restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, harass her to the point where she leaves. All of this stuff, this kind of hyperbole, I don't think it's a good idea, but it happens. So when Trump speaks to a rally in Washington, D.C., and tells the people, be peaceful, etc., but let's not give up, that's clearly within the rules of the game. If what had been undertaken had been, the Democrats are using the word insurrection in their articles of impeachment. If this was an insurrection, we are safe. It wasn't an insurrection. It was not sedition. Had it been either of those, it wouldn't have been, such a, I can't even use the right word, fire drill, because that's what it amounted to. It was totally disorganized. It had obviously no object, wasn't designed to accomplish anything. So all of this talk about sedition and insurrection, etc., what that really is designed to do, and I'll explain this a little later when I get to my friend Van, it's designed not to punish Trump, but to punish us. To take this opportunity to say, we've been telling you for 5 years and you wouldn't listen. Now maybe you'll know that we were right and you were so wrong, and you'll never go against us again because we've been so right about this. I just thought I would like to lay out a few important concepts. A colorable claim, using the mechanisms for challenge that are there. These are not the things that you criticize people for being bad people. You can criticize their arguments. You can say, I have a better argument than yours. That's the way it has to be.
Can I ask a real quick question?
Yes, sir.
With such a weak foundation for the definition of sedition, how it's being used these days, could they also be accused of sedition for using the word seditious?
I suppose. By
so
accusing the president of sedition.
They're setting up something.
Yeah.
They're scheming.
Mm-hmm. True enough. Okay, so I need a break after that little homily there that I just laid out. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to Frenchie for a few minutes. Go for it, Frenchie.
Hello, Bob.
Sir.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you 5 by 5.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think you're totally right in your analysis. And basically, all that noise that come out of those accusation that is made out of hot air, basically, it's basically a great distraction. So that we do not talk about something else. You know, that's about the only thing we've been talking about for the last 10 days. And that coalition that I've been talking about the last 2 days with big tech, you know, I noticed that in Europe they call big tech the GAFAs. I don't hear that expression here too much, the GAFAs. It's GAFA. And it stands for Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. And basically, actually some European courts have found that they are acting as a cartel, and therefore they have been fined quite a bit in some countries. And Poland even came up with very strict laws regarding them silencing speech, but it's all about silencing speech. And we've seen that during the election year last year, you know, in the streets, in the universities and everything, is the idea of hate speech and racism. And then when you put the two together, you know, it's like nitro and glycerin. It becomes very explosive. So those notions that hate speech and racism are not acceptable, that it kind of goes against the First Amendment, and the First Amendment is null and void when it comes on to those things. And we've seen the Speaker of the House using hyperboles, and it's very important, the power of words. And the left has always been very good in defining situation with the power of words by creating new situations that don't exist. And you know, they're accusing people of conspiracy theorists, and that the president actually, through his speech, committed sedition. Well, you know, these are the same people who, for 4 years, have been pushing conspiracy theorists about the president, about the involvement of the Russians, about God knows what else, some golden shower stories in Russian hotels that were pure imagination. I mean, even Hollywood couldn't come up with things like this, but this is still what they have been pushing, and those are the same people who are now pushing that sedition thing. And it is not accidental, because right away the so-called great healer Biden wanted to you know, start all over again, and he's already branding the opposition as domestic terrorist. He's done it in a public speech 2 days ago. It's a fantasy world, you know. There is domestic theory. I think the last time we have a domestic terrorist case was McVeigh in Oklahoma with that bombing, but he was basically a lonely wolf. You know, they have used that expression about Muslim terrorists, but we have had terrorism in our streets for decades, and it's always the same that are coming up and trying to scare people, that are coming out armed and dangerous. And we've seen them in the street the whole year, last year, and they are not domestic terrorists tied to so-called white supremacy and everything. They are actually the American Socialist Party, the Antifa, the new Black Panthers, and all those things that are parading in the streets with shields and helmets and deadbolt and all kind of things, and when they don't carry weapons. So it's very interesting how this is done. They did it in Virginia last year, if you remember, when the Democrat took over Virginia and they started going against the Second Amendment, and a lot of pro-Second Amendment people came in and they started telling people, oh, it's white supremacy, they're going to come and assault the Parliament of Virginia, and the Virginia governor put barricaded the Capitol, and it's the same dialectic, it's the same speech, it's the same way of trying to paint people in certain ways as radical. And the media kind of fell flat in Virginia because the white supremacists actually ended up being Asian, Black, Latinos, and also white. And and even gay gun owners, so these famous, identity politic of gun owners, it fell flat. But so then they moved along to the next story, which was like Trump is a racist, of course. And so the GAFAs, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, are the ones in the last few days that have been trying to censor speech by just basically taking away other platforms from doing their own work, like Parler and others. And it doesn't happen at all by accident, and it's a great distraction from the shortfalls of the DNC and also all the bad things that the DNC has been doing, and of course also Biden's mental capacity. And again, we haven't been talking about probably what was the biggest news coming out of the U.S. Senate in the last 5 years, which was the fact that the Obama administration financed Al-Qaeda. Nobody talks about it. And if there was a seditious act, I mean, financing a terrorist group that has hurt the United States in the past is a huge story. It's nowhere to be found. And so freedom of speech is fine, but we are moving into a next phase, which is silence, doing the silence on opposition speech, and even further, they are attempting to criminalize speech and opinion that is not in line with the doxa, with what is supposed to be thought of. And this is exactly what Booby Underwood did in his column yesterday. And it is the epitome of hypocrisy coming from the godfather of identity politics, of hatred of the other. Unless you are Chamorro, then you have no place on Guam. This is the man who is then coming and trying to give moral lessons to other people. He has cojones, I mean, this is amazing. This guy is so hypocritical, but then he fits well in the Democratic Party. This is always twisting the words and using words against what people mean, So now we have an unrivaled political power, and I don't think they're going to want to relinquish it. We have a fight on our hands.
True enough, Frenchie. You hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. All right, so I think we need to keep watching those GAFA, and I think the importance of the choice of words that we use to kind of give the fight back to those people is very important. Like calling it the Wuhan virus instead of COVID-19, and calling all those people what they are, which they are head promoters. And they are accusing others of doing what they are actually doing. I think it's very important.
I'll keep doing it, Frenchie.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Bye-bye.
Good talking to you, Frenchie. Yeah, well, as usual, Frenchie doesn't call unless he's He's got something to say, and he usually makes really good points. Okay, I was starting with Dr. Cabrera here, and I left off where Dr. Cabrera went to work at Public Health and Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services for $268,239 a year, which comes down to $128.96 per hour. Cabrera started at Public Health on January 4. DPHSS spokeswoman. Oh, Janela Carrera confirmed. Oh, that's pretty sexist, isn't it? A spokeswoman? Shouldn't they have said spokesperson?
Exactly.
Yeah. He will be the chief medical officer, Carrera said. As part of the job, he will function as the medical director, filling the vacancy left by Dr. Jana Manglotnya. So I guess it's going to be part of his job to give us all a good scolding from time to time. However, his responsibilities will be extended beyond that role, Carrera said. As an example, Cabrera will work closely with the DPHSS immunization program for vaccination, the laboratory administrator, the Bureau of Emerging and Infectious Diseases, and the public health bowling team. So he'll work with a lot of these programs within public health and not just focus on the medical side, Carrera said. Carrera said Cabrera will maintain hospital privileges at Guam Regional Medical City, which is where he was employed before he went to work at public health. And I suspect if he's got medical privileges. Dr. Jana Manglotnya was the DPHSS medical director. She retired last year. Even when she retired, the goal was to keep her on to do consultant work for us, Carrera said, adding that she isn't sure, however, if that contract was ever approved. So, it's very interesting. Now, the KUAM ran a copy of what people called the GG1 for Carrera's appointment, and it says that he goes to work at $268,239 even per annum. But it also says per employment contract, Section 1, not to exceed 40 hours per week. Now, some people would say, well, you know, they won't even let him work hard. But I think the reason that is there is because of the Fair Labor Standards Act. If an employer suffers or permits an employee to work beyond 40 hours in a work week, then he must be paid at a rate of time and a half for every hour over 40. Time and a half on top of $128. It's good that he doesn't work more than 40 hours. Okay, now employee entitled to all fringe benefits. All fringe benefits, including retirement, annual, sick, administrative leave, and health insurance, etc. Yeah.
That bowling shirt.
With a laundry list like that, you got to wonder what the etc. means. Well, I checked the statute, and I may have found something very interesting here. If one were to go to 10 GCA, chapter 31, section 3109, medical director establishment. The director shall appoint one of the classified physician specialists as a medical director to perform collateral administrative and clinical medical duties for the department. Now, this is the Department of Public Health, right? The medical director should be a physician specialist, preferably in a field of practice or multiple specialties required by the department, and an experienced public health care services administrator. The medical director shall serve at the pleasure of the director of public health, and shall, upon the termination of appointment as medical director, remain in the classified position which said person held prior to appointment as medical director. Said person shall retain all accrued benefits and leave, and shall be entitled to advancement in pay range and step to which that person is entitled in the position of physician specialist. Okay, I'm going to come back to this on the home stretch, after the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Here we are at Wrigley in Chicago. Seventh inning stretch. Time to stretch out. Yeah. Okay, seventh inning stretch. That means we got just 2 more innings of tall tales today till the end of the game. And I'm still working with Dr. Felix Cabrera. And I've gone to statute here to find out at Section 3109 of Title 10 about the establishment of the medical director. Now, the duties of the medical director may include, but are not necessarily limited to, the overall development, management, coordination of administrative policy and support for clinical medical services, public health coverage, on and on and on, right? Now, stopping and stepping back here, what this looks like is this. There are doctors at the Department of Public Health, and they want to make one of these doctors kind of like the principal of a school. He's going to teach classes, but he's also going to be in charge of administration. So, you know, that's what this seems to be contemplated here. Should be a physician specialist, he is to perform collateral administrative and clinical medical duties for the department, collateral to his regular duty as a physician. And when his term as a medical director is over, he goes back to where he was as a doctor in public health. But he is entitled to the raises and longevity raises that he would have obtained had he stayed in his position. That's how it looks to me. So I looked at the staffing pattern of the Department of Public Health. Guess how many doctors are on the staffing pattern of public health right now? 0.
Yikes.
Not even 1. And obviously Dr. Cabrera didn't come, that wasn't a doctor on the staff. He was brought in from outside, from GRMC. So there are no doctors on the staff right now, Even Dr. Dombrowski doesn't appear on that staffing pattern. Just looked at it yesterday.
I thought they had dentists.
I did not
Are they
see,
considered
I
doctors?
didn't even see a dentist.
Even a dentist.
Yeah. But I did not see a doctor at all. So that makes this whole thing just a little strange, you know. If the design is we've got doctors at public health, we'll single out one of them. We're going to make him kind of the head doctor, the administrator of the doctors, and we're going to pay him more money because of that. But when he's done, he can go back to being a regular doctor. But there are no doctors there. All right, so then I went to the next part of the statute, subsection B, compensation. The director of the Department of Public Health and Social Services is authorized, pursuant to negotiations, to add an additional incentive bonus to the base salary of an existing physician specialist. Of course, there are no existing physician specialists, who is appointed to directly perform administrative and clinical collateral duty as medical director of the department, up to a maximum amount not to exceed $50,000, subject to the availability of funds. Yeah. So does the 268 include the 50? Or is that what the et cetera in the GG1 means? Interesting questions. I'd really like to see the contract between public health and Dr. Cabrera. If nobody else does, I'm going to do a sunshine and I'm going to find that contract. None of this looks right. Now, $268,000 is a lot of money, and as one of our callers who makes a mark from time to time points out, isn't it as much as the president of the UOG and the medical examiner? I think it's more. I think the medical examiner knocked down about $250,000 even, and I don't think the president of the UOG makes that much. So I think Dr. Cabrera here is the highest paid employee of the government of Guam. I suppose I should say that, you know, he should make as much as a talk show host. I don't know, we can't pay him that much. And it's pretty easy to think, wow, $268,000, that's a lot of money, unless you know what the market rate is for doctors. I know it's a lot more for doctors than it is for lawyers. So that's one of the reasons I went to that staffing pattern. No doctors in the staffing pattern. I went to the staffing pattern for GMH. There is no staffing pattern for GMH. I asked a friend who works for one of the clinics a doctor who is an employee, that is not an equity participant in a firm, no ownership interest, just an employee. And he said that most doctors are knocking down a couple $100,000 a year as employees. Well, then, you know, if this guy Cabrera is doing all these things that his notes say he's supposed to be doing, and he's really good at what he's doing, well, I don't know. You know, if you're going to hire really talented people, you got to pay pretty good money. But I'd really like to see his contract, because I want to know about the $50,000 bonus, and I want to know if he really fits into this category, because it looks like in order to be the medical director, you had to have been a doctor first. So on the one hand, I would really like to think this is public health going out and paying top dollar for a really, really good doctor and medical director. I don't want to think, Cabrera is in pretty tight with the powers that be, so they found a really high-paying way to pay him a lot of money, a lot more than they'd be paying anybody else. I think the way to do that is to get a hold of that contract. So much for Dr. Cabrera. Let me see who I got on the phone here. Got a new stack. Takes me a little while to get over here. Dr. Ron McNinch, $268,000 a year, and who calls but Dr. Ron McNinch, a professor at the university who's probably knocking down that kind of money himself, right, Ron?
Not even close. No doubt, not even close. But my daughter, when she first learned how to use the telephone, one of her friends in kindergarten called her and said, "Wow, I found out your dad's a doctor today." And my daughter's like, "Yeah, my dad's a doctor, but he can't help anybody." So that's always helped me to keep it real on the doctor part.
All right.
So, but by the way, do you know why doctors get paid so much more than lawyers?
I've explained on Tall Tales before why I went to law school instead of medical school. The reason is that my handwriting wasn't bad enough to get into medical school, so I had to go to law school. But why does doctors make so much more money, Ron?
Because doctors actually do real work. But I know I love lawyer jokes, by the way. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
But and by the way, I know many lawyers who are very proud of that point. And one of my friends, when he took the bar exam, he got like a 71, and you need a 70 to pass, and he was so proud of that he was able to get by with just the minimum bare standard possible, which I always thought was. And now I understand. It's kind of like a way that lawyers kind of joke with each other.
It's kind of the lawyer's creed, isn't it, to do the bare minimum and just get by?
Right. But I think that's everybody. But lawyers tend to get a bad rap on it more than others. So that's especially when somebody has to be in litigation or whatever, and they don't understand the process or why things have to be done the way they're done. But hey, I was gonna.
Lawyers do get a bad rap, and it's so unfair because it's just 98% of the lawyers that give the other 2% a bad name.
Wow, exactly. And lawyers have a good appreciation for that kind of humor too. That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I think it's always fun. And there was a very famous case where a lawyer was asking a pathologist on the stand if he knew that the man was dead. And he goes, "Yes, absolutely, I know the man is dead." And he said, "Well, how do you know this?" He goes, "Because his brain is back at my lab on my desk in a jar," which is one of the. But he said after he said that, his brain's on a desk in a jar, on my desk in a jar. But for all I know, he could be out practicing law right now. That was and that was in an actual court. Yeah, that was actual court testimony.
Yeah.
So anyway, but hey, I wanted to talk just briefly about Parler and Amazon. It's been driving me crazy all day, and I had no idea what Parler was until Amazon took them off their servers, or basically when people started migrating from Twitter to Parler, then Amazon yanked their servers on it, which is just horrible. I don't know. I know, French, you talked earlier about just the cartel aspects of these companies, and I think there's something to that. I think that instead of having these narco oligarchs, we have these technologists. They act a lot like what really bothers me is if people disagree with each other, they should have the ability to stand on a soapbox and say, "I disagree," or I dissent with what you have to say. But when you have companies that are in effect regulating dissent, I think that's a big thing we need to be worried about.
Ron, you must be in the wind or something because we're getting a lot of noise.
Okay, I apologize. Yeah, it might be that.
Well, the latest thing that happened was that a joint venture among Amazon, Facebook, and Twitter bought every soap company in the United States. So that there will be no more soapboxes forever. They're going to eliminate all the competition.
Yeah, that sounds to me like robber baron attitudes that we thought we got rid of, with Theodore Roosevelt when he broke up all the trusts. It's incredible. There's a new form of trust now, and it sows distrust. It's incredible.
Well, you know, without going to the books, when you have combinations in restraint of trade that amount to predatory competition, like Amazon deliberately putting Parler out of business, that certainly sounds like an antitrust violation.
Right. And the scary part, and this is the other scary part about it, is that, you know, who guards the guardians now? I mean, who watches out for this stuff? I don't know anymore. That's the really scary part.
Well, there was a time when, you know, and I'd have a little chat about the Fourth Estate and how important the Fourth Estate was to keep our government honest. But now the Fourth Estate is turned as cannibalizing itself to the point where it can't serve that watchdog function.
Right. It's like the Fourth Estate is the Twilight Zone now. It's like they're aliens from outer space, some of these people. And I'm not just talking about one side or the other. It seems like all of them are like this. And I just don't know, when I read news stories, and I can't watch some of the media coming out on these, and it's really ideologically driven media. I can't watch them anymore. I'm like, I know for a fact what they're saying is absolutely not true. And yet they say it as if it's fact, and as if you know, ipse dixit, if I say it, it is so, and nobody calls them on it, ever. It just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But as I said yesterday, anybody, if they don't like what you have to say, can call in and disagree with you, and or you know, basically concur with what you have to say. I think that's what free speech is about. And the scary part is, these aren't just idle issues with free speech. These are issues of government and policy that people are concerned about, and they're expressing this, you know, concern with, and they're apparently being squelched by these companies. I don't know. This is incredible.
Well, anyone who wants to disagree, you know, can call in on Tall Tales, and just to make it fair, I'll tie half my brain behind my back, Ron.
Well, you know, I have to say that, you know, one of my early mentors was a judge, and before he was a judge, of course, he was a lawyer. And he said, boy, when you grow up, don't you ever become a lawyer. And I'm like, okay. And then later he became a judge, and I asked him, I said, why did you tell me never to become a lawyer? And he goes, because lawyers argue too much. And, you know, and I never forgot that. And what he was really talking about is having to argue positions that you really don't believe in. But he was talking about a profession, that's what their job is quite often. And many times people forget that sometimes when lawyers speak for their client in public, they have to be a zealous advocate for their client, and they have to watch out for their interests. But the crazy thing is, who's watching out for people now? Who's watching out for citizens now? That's the scary part. We don't have a zealous advocate anymore. We don't have anyone in the media anymore to really tell us the truth, and that to me is scary.
Well, it's just the Andrew Breitbart part of what's left of the press and talk radio that we have that's really looking out for us, who will come out and say that which might be unpopular amongst the ruling class.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then the other thing that bothers me, and this bothered me earlier today too, is various companies are saying very, very openly and conspicuously that they're no longer going to be throwing money at politicians anymore. And my question is, why do we let these companies throw money at politicians to begin with? If that's going to be the thread that they're going to hang these people on, is that, oh, we're going to cut off your funding if you don't say what we think you should say. That to me is downright scary. I don't know. I just, we'll see where things go. But
Hallmark is asking for their money back from their PAC, Hall PAC.
Yeah.
They asked Senator Hawley, and I can't remember who the other politician was. They said, we want our money back.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's one of the things that people used to say about politicians. Yeah, he's a really good politician. Once you buy him, he stays bought, right?
Wow. Yeah, I really get concerned when I hear things like this. And of course, we know these things go on. It's just when they do it so conspicuously, it's as if they're proud of it. They're like, see, we paid this person all this money, and see, when they don't say what we want, when they say what we don't want them to say, we're going to yank the chain on them. And that's just pathetic. I don't know. I think that this is very problematic behavior, but, we'll see where things go.
Stick with tall tales, Ron.
Hey, have a great day, sir, and take care.
Good talking to you. Okay, we're going to head down the home stretch. And Louie, I noticed you rang off, but why don't you call back in during the commercial break here for the home stretch, and I'll let you finish up down the home stretch.
Okay, Google. Hey, Siri. Hi, Bixby.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Open the Point app. Opening.
Live stream, on demand, swap stations. Check out the visual radio. Get the free app available on the App Store and Google Play, or go to thepoint.gu.
It takes all of us to protect Guam. Join the Guam Visitors Bureau in our social media campaign series aimed to protect our island and each other in this COVID-19 era. Participate in the Protect Guam movement by wearing your mask, showcasing Guam's heroes, staying active, and downloading the Guam COVID Alert app. Post and share your content with us. Use the hashtag ProtectGuam, and you could win $100. It's that simple. Check out visitguam.com for details. Let's reclaim our lives, our economy, and our tourism industry.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, heading down the home stretch. I was hoping that Louis would ride down the home stretch with me. Maybe he'll call up here before the horses get to the post. The next item on my card here is Gura Board, as you were Gura Commissioners versus Topaznia. Ray Topaznia will remain as Executive Director of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority after the Gura Board of Commissioners. The Gura Commissioners gave him an overall satisfactory performance rating, one notch lower than his prior highly satisfactory rating. Satisfactory is the third highest in Gura's 5-point rating. The board, the commissioners, led by Chairman Sabino Flores, went into executive session on Friday after voting to approve Topaznia's performance evaluation result and to retain him as executive director. Now, didn't they do that backwards? Did they talk about his performance evaluation in an open session? Horror of horrors. The commissioners, meanwhile, gave Gura Deputy Director Elizabeth Napoli an overall performance rating of highly satisfactory. Well, that's bound to cause a little jealousy, isn't it? And what are they doing making that public? You know, I'm going to turn them into the three lawyers over at the CCU. There was no discussion or action by the board on pay adjustments for either Topaznia or Napoli. The annual evaluation is required for Gura's compensation plan for the performance review period January 11, 2020 to January 10, 2021. The chairman gave me an outstanding rating, and I worked directly for the board chairman. Ah, that's interesting. Topaznia told the Daily Post when sought for comment on his latest performance evaluation. Outstanding is the highest rating. However, the four other members gave Topaznia lower ratings, bringing the overall rating to satisfactory. Doesn't matter to Topaznia, he works for the chairman. Topaznia said he's not certain about a salary increment, especially because the prior evaluation result with a salary increment has not been resolved yet. Now, you'll recall that what happened was the public auditor, B.J. Cruz, met with the Gura commissioners and told them, don't give Topaznia a salary increment. The next day, Topaznia said that the public auditor had advised the commissioners to give him a salary increment, at which time the public auditor gave Topaznia a highly satisfactory rating. He really recognized Topaznia's skill by saying he can lie with a straight face. Yeah, the board previously waited long into 2020 to rate Napoli's and Topaznia's performance for 2019. This time around, the board gave a timely evaluation report. In October, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development sent a letter stating that Topaznia provided only part of the facts when making public comments on challenges with federally funded projects. Topaznia later told the board that he did not misinform the community about a new Sinatnia fire station and a $12 million loan for iLearn Academy Charter School. At Friday's Gura meeting, former Gura chairman David Sablan, this is a different angle here. I'm not going to go into that. So we have Topaznia being rated satisfactory by his commissioners, but rated outstanding by the chairman of the commissioner. And we have Topaznia saying, I work for the commissioner, for the chairman, not for these other yahoos. And then we have the commissioners making public doing the evaluation apparently in public and doing the evaluation of the deputy director in public. I think that they need to hire Joey Duenas as a consultant to help them understand how the open government laws and the sunshine laws work, because obviously they've got some real problems there. Okay, I'm going to put Frank Blas versus part-time legislature aside and go to James W. Moylan versus the Attorney General. Maybe I can finish it before the end of the show. With objectives of reducing government expenditures, Senator James C. Moylan, it must be a typo, they call him James C. Moylan, introduced 3 measures Monday morning, of which he also indicated will be the first of several which he plans on introducing this term, focused on achieving similar intentions. He starts out with Bill 17-36, prohibits the funding of deputy directors under the executive branch. And let's see. Moylan has expressed, just as he did in 2019 when similar measures were introduced, that nothing prevents any governor from hiring a deputy director or even operating a Washington liaison office, granted that the funding comes from what is appropriated to their respective offices. Now, he's got a bill, I'm looking at the bill here, Bill 17, notwithstanding any other provisions, law, rule, or regulation, no funds from the budget appropriated to any department shall be used to fund the position of an unclassified deputy director or any like similar position. Now, I have an opinion from the Attorney General dated December 28, 2018. This was Elizabeth Barrett Anderson. And the question, does Chapter 13, Part 1, Section 4 of Public Law 34-116 violate the separation of powers doctrine, and that the legislature impose conditions on an appropriation which impinges on the executive branch of Guam power to allocate staff and resources for the proper fulfillment of its duty to execute the laws? The answer, yes. And then it goes on to say, it cites the statute, funding of unclassified deputy director and similar positions prohibited, notwithstanding any other provision of law. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? Okay, I'm going to have to come back to this tomorrow. I'm going to come back to Frank, the legislature here, Frank and Jim, tomorrow. And we'll see you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The House still pushing for the president's removal. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A week and a day before his term ends, House Democrats today will likely approve a resolution calling for the vice president and the cabinet to remove President Trump under the 25th Amendment. Failing that, Wednesday they'll begin debating a single article of impeachment, claiming the president encouraged last week's violence at the Capitol.
House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy says he's against impeaching President Trump, but he did issue a memo listing other avenues available to lawmakers to denounce the president's actions leading up to the Capitol Hill riot, including a measure to censure President Trump. That means lawmakers would issue a formal statement of disapproval. Republican Congressman Tom Reed of New York says he's going to join other lawmakers later today to introduce a measure to censure.
It's Fox's Jill Nato. Republican Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado tells Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum. Pushing impeachment seems to contradict the incoming administration's calls for unity.
This president-elect could gain a lot of goodwill among Republicans and Democrats, frankly, but among Americans generally, if he told everybody, slow down. This president is not an imminent threat to this country at this point.
The FBI warning of the potential for more violent protests between now and the inauguration, both in Washington and state capitals. The president has issued an emergency declaration for D.C. Two rulings from a federal court Monday may have saved the life of convicted killer Lisa Montgomery. A federal judge ordered a stay of execution